lot of times the reason we like certain songs or certain movies is because of the storyline. There's usually something that we can relate to, something that stands out to us, okay? And today, each one of us in this room, we have a story. You have a story, you have a story, I have a story, Lance has a story. Every one of us in this room, we have a story. Some of your stories are a little short right now because you're just beginning your life, and others are a little bit longer like mine. And I want to talk about some difficult circumstances for a few minutes because, I mean, sometimes life ends up punching you in the face. And you don't expect it. And sometimes there's things, and there's some of you in this room today that you're facing some situations that you didn't deserve. There's some situations that you're having to deal with that maybe life has dealt you that you didn't exactly plan on that happening. There's circumstances out of our control. The other type of difficult circumstances that a lot of us face are the circumstances that we find ourselves in because of the choices that we choose to make. And I can remember when I was growing up, a little bit younger than you guys, I can remember looking around and there were some people in my neighborhood and they had this dude around that they called Dad. And this guy, you know, he would like play catch with them, and he would take them fishing, and they would go places together, and he would come to their football and baseball practices and to their games. And I didn't have that dude around my life. And so I went to my mom and I said, "Hey Mom, where's this guy that everyone calls Dad? Where's my dad?" And she looked at me and she said, "Well, son, your dad was killed in war." And I was like, "Wow, that's cool." So he's kind of like a war hero. So, you know, a year or two went by and I thought that was pretty awesome. And then one night I was sitting in my living room, we're watching TV, and there was a movie on, and it was a war movie, and they had gone to visit the family of one of their sons who'd been killed in war, and they'd gone to visit them, and they were at the graveyard. And I turned to my mom and I said, "Hey Mom," I said, "I want to go see my dad's grave." And she looked at me and she got up out of the chair, she turned the TV off, and she sat down next to me on the floor and she said, "Son, I need to ask you forgiveness because I lied to you. The truth is your dad wasn't killed in the war. The truth is he lives here in town, he'd already had a couple kids, and he just didn't want the responsibility of being a dad again." His mom. So I grew up in a single parent home. And not only that, we were poor. You've heard the expression, "We're so poor we can't pay attention." Well, we could pay attention, but we didn't have much change left over. I mean, it was poor. I know what it's like to stand in line to go and get government cheese. I know what it's like to go to cross lines and places like that and have to buy our clothes there. I know what it's like to listen to my mom cry at night because she knows she can't really pay all the bills and she's upset about all the different things stresses that are going on in life. There's many of you in this room today that is 13. And I was laying in bed one night and I was listening to my mom cry. And one of her boyfriends had just left and they got in this fight. It was not a good night. And I'm laying there and I'm scared and I'm upset. And I made a promise to myself that night that if I ever had the opportunity to be a dad, that I was going to be the dad that I never had. And as I got older, that confusion and that hurt and that not understanding what really happened and why my dad did what he did and seeing my mom have to go through all the different stuff that she went through, that started to change when I got older. So then it started turning into anger and bitterness. And I started hating my dad. And I didn't handle that adversity very well. I didn't handle it the right way. So then I compiled my problems with circumstances that I had no control over, that were just dealt to me. And then because of choices that I ended up making around my freshman year in high school, getting involved with the wrong crowd, getting involved with drugs and alcohol, I began to take those choices I were making and ended up compiling my problems and my issues. Because I was leaning up against my car and I was standing there and I was thinking about my life and everything that was going on. My mom was sick. She'd been diagnosed with emphysema. She wasn't doing well. All these things were just piling up, and I just didn't see any way out. I was hurting so bad, and it was just everything was coming down on me. And this thought hit my head. And when I was 13, I was laying in bed, and I made a promise that I wanted to be a dad someday. And I said, you know what? I can't, because I made a promise I'm going to be a dad. And I left that cemetery, and I made a choice to make some changes in my life. I made a choice to make some changes in my life. And so no matter what family cycle that you may be in, maybe some of you in this room today can relate to what I'm saying. Maybe some of you in this room can relate to that story, to those stories. But I'm here to tell you today, if you choose not to give up, you choose to hang in there and make some adjustments, you can overcome them. And your greatest opponent in life is not necessarily what your dad does, or what your mom does, or what that bully at school is doing. Your greatest opponent in life is going to be your own self, the person that you look at every morning in the mirror. So today, it's not what happens to you, it's what you choose to become. Some of you guys didn't deserve what life has dealt you thus far, but it's going to be your choice of whether or not you're going to overcome it. And Kayla, she had every opportunity at that point to just quit and stop playing any type of sport, just take her medication and just give up. But she didn't. She didn't quit. She didn't let what life throw at her stop her. She overcame the adversity. We can't quit. If Kayla would have quit, she would have never reached her goals. If I would have quit when I was 17, I would have never had the opportunity to be a dad to those two boys that you saw earlier on the screen. So my message is here, basically, as we wrap this thing up, is this. I'm here today because as I look up there, as I look down here, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt there's a Preston sitting in this room. And you may be sitting here today and you're listening to me and you may be catching half of it or a quarter of it, but if just one of you guys here today, if just one of you leave here today determined not to give up, regardless of what's going on, and determined to make something of your life, then it's been worth it. But the bottom line is, it's your choice. So my question is to you today, what will your story be? The pen's in your hand, and it's your choice.